What is good, everybody? Welcome back into TGI Football. I am Steven Serda. RJ Ochoa is not on the Super Bowl edition of TGI Football. Some would say that that's just him running away from what is likely to be a same game parlay miss, just based off of his regular season record. But RJ's covering the Super Bowl on the ground in Las Vegas, so he is not with us this week. But we'll still we still got a pick three to get to. We still got locks of the week, and I want to remind you guys that TGI Football is presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code SBNFL, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Now, so since RJ is not here, I am still joined by a good friend from Bleeding Green Nation, Brandon Lee Gowton. BLG, Super Bowl week. My week has not been great. I am ready to get to this game already. I am ready to stop talking about it because I've talked about it in a million different ways. But still, at the end of the day, I'm very excited for Sunday's Super Bowl matchup between the Chiefs and 49ers.
I'm wearing my red Phillies hat, as you can see, for the audio listeners who can't. That is for the Chiefs. It's not for the 49ers. I really want the Chiefs to win this game.
Woo!
I know there's a lot of Chiefs fatigue out there, Taylor Swift fatigue maybe for some people, but I think most people should be able to agree. Obviously, not 49ers fans agreeing with this, but I think the 49ers are the bigger villain in this Super Bowl, and I don't want to see them win. I think the Chiefs are the more likable team. I don't know if America disagrees with that, but that's how I feel.
It's actually, I think I was talking to Pete Sweeney about this earlier this week, and some of it is because I'm too just like trapped in a Chiefs bubble where, here in Kansas City, and we follow the team so closely at Arrowhead Pride, like we're just too locked into it. We're too close to everything. And I was sitting here trying to explain to myself like how the Chiefs could lose this Super Bowl. And like, obviously there's several different ways. 49ers, very talented football team. But I was like, the vibes are a little too good for the Chiefs, in my opinion. Like, I feel like they're too positive right now. Like, there's too many people who are too confident in the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and everything they've done this postseason run. But then I talked to Pete, and he was like, yeah, it's the total opposite in Vegas. It seems like everyone is super confident that the 49ers are going to beat the Chiefs. So I think it's just my Chiefs bubble that I'm living in right now, where I feel like the vibes are just too high right now. And maybe I'm just worried about the 49ers going nuts on Sunday or something.
That's interesting observation there from Pete. I just, my big thing coming from the Eagles' perspective of it all was that the 49ers, are this whiny, complaining team. And that's continuing going into Super Bowl week where their practice field isn't good enough or whatever. There's always something. There's always some kind of excuse or complaint from Kyle Shanahan, from the 49ers. So I'm hoping they can complain about something that causes them to lose the Super Bowl. I'm not on board with it. But I guess I'm expecting a good game in any case.
Yeah. I think the 49ers fire alarm went off at the hotel this morning or something,
exactly.
which is like, which I think the guys were obviously upset about that, but that's a pretty typical Super Bowl week thing. Somebody always finds the hotel and does something stupid. So you should just expect that at this point. The field thing, like, that's one thing that I am not going to miss about this week. This whole like Chiefs narrative, like it's all rigged. The NFL wants the Chiefs and Taylor Swift to win, and everybody's rooting for Patrick Mahomes, and that's why the referees are going to be on the Chiefs side. Like, all of that stuff is totally made up, and I understand that we get this stuff with success, but I am looking forward to all of that stuff being behind us, because I think it takes away from what the Chiefs have accomplished this season in what was considered a remarkably down year, and they're still in the Super Bowl. So we're going to get into everything about this game. We'll give you our predictions. We've got some over-unders that we want to go through ahead of the Super Bowl. But before we do all that, we got to give you our pick three, brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That's code SBNFL. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. So, BLG, I have spent a lot of the pick three season and the regular season of the NFL kind of picking what I felt like were safer options. And I feel like you and RJ kind of picked the safer options this week. Whereas, like, I feel like I can usually rely on you guys to do some deeper dive legs of the parlay. And I feel like this week I did that and you guys went with the safer option. So what is your same game parlay leg this week ahead of Super Bowl 58?
Obviously, there are no locks in gambling. Well, except maybe when it comes to your lock of the week's picks, pretty much. But for this, my leg here of the same game parlay for the SB Nation NFL show, I mean, I know you talked about it not being rigged or anything, but come on, we're not going to have Travis Kelce get in the end zone in the Taylor Swift Super Bowl. Like, that's not going to be a thing that happens, rigged or not. I mean, I just feel like the Chiefs are going to make an extra special effort for that to happen, to, make sure you can definitely show. I mean, obviously they can show Taylor Swift anytime they want on the broadcast if she's there, assuming she is there. But I mean, the Travis Kelce touchdown has to happen at some point, and regardless of the Taylor Swift of it all, this is a guy who scored a touchdown in 19 of his 21 playoff games. And if you take out his first three going back to, like 2015, 2016, very early in his career, it's actually 19 in his last 18 playoff games. And he hasn't necessarily scored in every one. There's been some multiple touchdown games in there. I think he could score multiple touchdowns in this game, by the way, and we'll talk about that later. But I just feel like Travis Kelce at some point is going to find the end zone.
Yeah, it feels like the safer bet, I think, like out of any of the Chiefs pass catchers. And a lot of it has been made about, well, the 49ers are going to give him all this attention. Like, well, I mean, I think the Ravens were paying pretty close attention to him, and he still had a very nice game in the AFC Championship game. But I don't fault you. I feel like it's the safest of any Chiefs offensive weapon. Like, Travis Kelce is going to get a lot of looks in this game, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure he finds success, because the Chiefs offense is successful when Travis Kelce is out there making plays. And I feel like RJ, he was the last person to submit his pick this week, and it's easily the safest bet of the Super Bowl, in my opinion. He chose a Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown. And the 49ers, their offense is just loaded with so many superstar players, but Christian McCaffrey is the most important of all of them, and he is the best of all of them, in my opinion. So I feel like you can bank on Christian McCaffrey finding the end zone at some point in this game. And where I kind of went a little bit off the track and kind of tried to dig a little bit deeper for Super Bowl week, which maybe this will be awesome. Maybe this will blow up in my face, but I chose the 49ers to lose a fumble that's plus 110. And this is just a vibes pick. Like, this is, I don't know if I feel super confident in it, but I feel good about it from a Chiefs defense standpoint. The 49ers have not fumbled the ball a ton this year, and the 49ers have not fumbled the ball in the postseason. But I am banking on the Chiefs secondary, which has been dramatically underrated all season long. And I don't think that San Francisco, outside of Baltimore, has played a secondary that's as physical as the Chiefs secondary. Everyone in the Chiefs secondary can tackle, and everyone is athletic, and they want to go lay hits, and they force a lot of fumbles, and they've been really good at it this season. All of their cornerbacks can do it. Their safeties are hard-hitting safeties that want to go downhill, and they're playmakers. And I just don't think, I think the idea going into this game is that San Francisco is just like this physical team, and they've got these physical freaks who just bully you around. And I don't think that's totally the case. And I think it discredits how physical the Chiefs defense has been this season. So I think there's a good chance that we see that football on the grass this weekend. And I think that the Chiefs have a good chance of forcing a fumble and creating some turnovers against the 49ers.
Could be maybe a strip sack too. Could be, I know you said the 49ers haven't fumbled a lot, but they have players who don't go down. Like, they're not going to just go down and, or step out of bounds. They have guys who want to get and will get yards after the catch. So that kind of does, the flip side of that is it gives the Chiefs an opportunity to maybe punch the ball out at some point.
Yeah. And that our same game parlay total is plus 410 this week. BLG's regular season record or season long record is 9-12. RJ's 8-13. I am also 8-13. So I thought I was clearly going to wind up last place in this thing, but I am tied with RJ now. So see how the Super Bowl works out. But I feel good about this one. I feel like Kelsey, CMC, safe. Betting on the Chiefs defense has been something that has really helped me prosper as a gambler this season. So feeling pretty confident about it. Like I mentioned, we're going to go through some Super Bowl over-unders, get into our predictions. And then after the commercial break, I want to remind you to stick around. Our friend Rob Stats Guerrero from Radio Row caught up with Max Crosby and Drew Brees. So we'll have those coming up for you later on in the pod. So make sure you stick around for that. But BLG, we went through some Super Bowl over-unders. We're going to go through a handful of our favorite things to bet on in this game and things to look at. And I'm going to start with you because I sent you mine. You haven't sent me yours. And I sent you mine. And after I sent you mine, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have sent them. But I wanted to make sure we didn't have a bunch of overlap or something like that. But there's so many things to bet on in the
for
Super Bowl.
sure.
It probably would have been very hard. But what do you got for me?
Yeah, I appreciate you playing along with me because, and it's, I think this is a good mix because yours are more like the actual on DraftKings sportsbook kind of like bets you can actually legs you can actually, place individually. Either way, some of mine are a little bit, some of mine you can actually bet on. Some of them are kind of just like creative, like things that I tried to make watching the game more fun for those who don't maybe have as strong of a rooting interest, kind of just weird things. So I'm going to start off with one of those, for example, that is Chiefs 49ers non-quarterback pass attempts. I have that set. I'm setting my own line here at 0.5. Do you think we will see some kind of trick play in this game where a non-quarterback throws the ball?
Not on the Chiefs side.
I hope not for the Chiefs.
Well, they have done that before, and Andy Reid did it a few years ago with Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce just launched it, and it was intercepted because he had no business throwing the football. So I don't think Andy Reid trusts anybody on the team to try to run a play like that anymore.
I think we'll see one. I think you're right, and again, I hope not, because when you have Patrick Mahomes, you don't need anyone else throwing the ball. But when you have Brock Purdy, and he hasn't been, amazing consistently in the playoffs, maybe you mix in like a Debo or a Christian McCaffrey throwing attempt there at some point. So I'll take the over on that. I'll say we see at least one. Yeah,
I feel like maybe they've done that this season with like CMC or Juwan Jennings or something like that. Or maybe I'm thinking of another season, but I feel like the 49ers have done something like that in the past. My next one is, so this is kind of me just avoiding like the CMC stuff and the superstar player stuff, because it's also, I'm not good at over-unders in my gambling because I always want points and I want to see fun stuff. And so I find myself gambling on, well, you want the overs because you want a lot of scoring and you want a lot of big plays, especially from the star players. So I tried to kind of pick some things in my over-unders that weren't just like the superstar players that we can bank on getting a lot of work. So my first one is backup 49ers running back Elijah Mitchell over 3.5 rushing yards, minus 145. And this is simply like, when Elijah Mitchell's healthy, Kyle Shanahan will put him in the game and give him a few carries. And it's just so low at 3.5 rushing yards. Like he can get that on one carry. He's probably going to get like 4 or 5 touches in this game, unless they're just like, we're going to run CMC 30 times and not give anybody, not put anybody else on the field because we need CMC to win. But it feels like it's a safe bet. Like only 3.5 rushing yards. I feel like Elijah Mitchell's got that in him at minus 145.
I'm going to take the under just because I think is what you said. It's just going to be like CMC. It's going to be him all day. And also it just, it takes like one run here where he gets tackled for -2. And that could be like the death knell, because like, does he get the ball again? Is he able to get, at that point, what he needs to get over it? So I'm going to say Vegas knows something here, and it's this low for a reason. I'm going to lean the under.
It's just 3.5. He can go. I got faith.
Which brings me to my next one, now there's some level of subjectivity here, but I think it's one of those situations where you know it when you see it. And I have this described as a WTF Andy Reid timeout in parentheses, outside of an obvious stop the clock situation. As someone who covered Andy Reid, or watched Andy Reid, I should say, for many years in Philadelphia, and I've noticed, I think he still does this with the Chiefs. There's times where it's just like the first quarter and the Chiefs are taking a timeout for some reason. It's not like nothing strategic about it. It's just because I guess they're talking it over or whatever. So any kind of, non end of first half, end of the game situation where Andy Reid takes a timeout, that's kind of just like, why did they just take that timeout? I'm going to set that at 0.5. Are you going over or under?
That's over. I think that's a lock.
Agreed.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's something that when you have success, you don't get criticized for some of the small things. Andy Reid's still bad at clock management. Kyle Shanahan's not good at it either, but Andy, it's not something that we talk about so much in Kansas City anymore, but it is frustrating. They waste timeouts constantly. And then another thing that really drives me nuts about Andy, and this is another kind of similar Kyle Shanahan thing, is like when they get close to the 2-minute warning at the half or late in the game, they don't burn their timeouts early. They wait until after the 2-minute warning every time. They never burn them early. And it drives me insane because it's like, you're just wasting clock. Like, why not just burn them early and take it down to the 2-minute warning? Like, what are we doing here? So I think that's a guarantee. I think that is a great call by you. My next one, I think this is kind of a safe one, though. Mahomes hasn't been running a ton in the playoffs, but right now he's listed on the DraftKings Sportsbook over 26.5 rushing yards, -115. And this kind of, he had that long run that I think was over 26 yards in last year's Super Bowl against the Eagles. That kind of put the nail in the coffin. And I think this is kind of one of those games where you just go out there and you put it all on the line. And I think in those kinds of games, we've seen him over his career just come up with these huge rushing attempts. And even though he hasn't been running a ton in the postseason, I think it's a pretty safe bet. Like, he can easily get to 30 yards. We've seen him do it. And 26.5, I think, is a good number. So I'd expect to see at least one long Patrick Mahomes run in Sunday's Super Bowl.
Yeah. Maybe I'm over, weighing this more because I am personally scarred by this. But yeah, I'm going to take the over. It's something that's been talked about a lot that, when Mahomes needs to run and he can just deliver that dagger, it's like, oh, you have everything covered perfectly. Great. Now he's taking off running, and for a big game too, like you said, because everyone's so worried that he's going to pass the ball that it's like the last thing on their minds. It's like, oh yeah, we forgot he can actually run the ball too when he needs to or has to. So I think there could be multiple situations, even if it's not one run where he's just, it's a 3rd and long. He takes off maybe a couple times in this game. And I think he does go over on this.
Yeah, it's I think it will too be like a critical moment in the game where he's just, everybody's covered, they're playing perfect defense, Patrick Mahomes rips off 25 yards and you're just like, this freaking guy. So I totally agree. I think it's a safe bet. I feel good about that one.
And I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to put up a corresponding article for this activity on SBNation.com proper. So if you want to get in on the action, you can actually, vote in the polls for these prompts that I'll put up. So that way you can see if you can beat me and Steven collectively as the listenership. So there you go. My next one, sticking with the coaching theme, I just did the Andy Reid one. This one is the aforementioned Kyle Shanahan. I have labeled this as obvious, cowardly field goal kick or punt decision. I think, if there's any ambiguity on that, I think, we can defer to the 4th down bot that, tells you like this is one of the most cowardly decisions you can possibly make. And also, I think it'll be fairly obvious if that's the case. And he does do this. I have that set at 1.5. What are you taking, over or under?
I'll take the over on that. That's been one of the biggest things I've talked about this week. And I just mentioned like Andy Reid's issues, and Andy Reid does the exact same thing. Like, he gets way too conservative at times. But I think he'll still play it aggressive, like at least like early in the game in the first half where he's trying to get out ahead and trying to set the Chiefs up to play defense. Kyle Shanahan, week after week, like, you can bank on it. He's going to make a bad decision where you're like, dude, you have the most versatile group of offensive skill players in the NFL. Why aren't you being aggressive? He just absolutely will not do it. So I think that's safer than the Andy Reid one, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, he played for the field goal in the Packers game and then didn't get any points at the end of the first half. Yeah, his cowardice is definitely going to be on display at some point, and that's ultimately why, I'm feeling better about the Chiefs and the 49ers in this game, so I will also take the over on the 1.5, which brings us to your next one.
I'm going to go with Chase Young under 0.25 sacks, minus 330. Chase Young hasn't had a sack since Christmas. Um, it's crazy to me to think that 49ers defensive line, and when they traded for Chase Young, I was like, man, that's a game-changing move. Like, I really thought that they were going to get the best out of him with Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, like Javon Kinlaw. Like, it's their defensive line on paper has as much talent as any defensive line in the NFL. And since they traded for Chase Young, their defensive line has somehow gotten worse. And Chase Young has not really had a dramatic impact on their play. And like you saw in the NFC Championship game, there were several plays that a lot of people were pointing out that were like serious lack of effort plays from Chase Young. And you'd like to think that he's going to step things up in the Super Bowl, but if he hasn't had a sack since Christmas, and then we're talking about the postseason, like I feel pretty confident that Chase Young's not going to sack Patrick Mahomes on Sunday.
Yeah, it's tough because on one hand, maybe he's due. I'm going to take the over on this, probably regrettably so. Patrick Mahomes is just so good at not taking sacks, which is what I'm worried about. But it's at 0.25. I mean, a half a sack is kind of like an easy thing to get in the NFL when you don't deserve it sometimes. You don't necessarily need to be a good player. You can just kind of join in the play late and get credit for half a sack. So that's what I'm going to bank on here. But I think to your point, though, the 49ers pass rush, their reputation is very much preceding them right now. Like, it's like, oh, the 49ers have this great defensive line. And they do on paper, but like the hype hasn't quite matched the reality for a little bit here. And I think that's why, these first two playoff games, haven't been just, the dominant performances that we've used to been seeing for the Niners when they're at their peak. So I think your pick is probably more reasonable, but I'm just going to bank on maybe he gets lucky and gets the half of a sack. Doesn't even need a full sack to get on this. That brings me to this one is a real one, I believe, that I heard. Shout out to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. They read this one on their ad. I couldn't find it on DraftKings Sportsbook, but it exists somewhere. The combined touchdown score jersey numbers for both teams. Now, this is like anytime touchdown score kind of deal. So this isn't like passing touchdowns. This is, the touchdown scorer himself. Combined touchdown score jersey number for both teams, Steven, is 121.5. Are you taking the over? There's a lot of math to do here, with these players and their jersey numbers. But are you taking the over or the under on 121.5? This is one you kind of need prep for because there's a lot to think about.
I'm thinking of everybody's numbers. I'm gonna take the over because you need one bit. You need an 80s number, like you need a Kelsey or a Kittle touchdown.
Two Kelsey touchdowns. Yeah, is boom. You're there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Unless it's only you get credit for one.
But no, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it would have to be if Travis Kelce scores 2 times, then they would hit because I think unless it's I don't know. I think so.
Like I think
that's how we're doing it.
You need that because then if you get 2 Isaiah Pacheco touchdowns, you might be in trouble because he's number 10 and like MVS is number 11.
There's a lot of low numbers.
87. That'll get you there.
Because you have Debo 19, McCaffrey 23. Like, there's a lot of low numbers here. Or the best thing probably is a Kelsey and a Kittle. That would be like an easy way to get this, but it's tough. The quarterbacks, the rushing touch, if they rush, we get 15 from Mahomes. Like, I'm gonna take the over on it because, like you said earlier, it's just kind of more fun to root for than the under. Yeah. But it is it's a little tenuous.
It does feel like that's one of those ones where you think, over easy.
Definitely
And then
over,
it's
yeah.
like there's so many guys that have single digit numbers now that it's probably a lot harder if you actually like look into it and research it.
Yeah. Yep.
But my next one, I feel really good about this one. It's
Mm,
Chris Jones over 0.25 sacks plus 120. So I don't think Chase Young is going to get there, but I do
yeah.
feel pretty confident in Chris Jones getting there. At the end of the day, it really just comes down to they need Chris Jones to be massive in this game. And Chris Jones, over the last few years, has been one of the best postseason performers in the NFL. And I think there is a strong possibility that this is his last game as a Kansas City
Wow.
Chief. He gets $1 million bonus if they win a Super Bowl. And I also think this is kind of like a legacy defining game for him where he's got a strong case to be a Hall of Famer right now. A third Super Bowl ring only improves those chances. And if this is his last game as a Kansas City Chief, I think he wants to be remembered as a guy that helped win 3 Super Bowls here in Kansas City. And the 49ers offensive line outside of Trent Williams is totally beatable. So Chris Jones is going to
Mhm.
have to be massive from the interior for the Chiefs on Sunday. So I feel really good about the impact that he can have in this game.
Maybe it'll be the strip sack that he gets that helps you also hit in your same game
Yes.
parlay leg there. I'm gonna take the over as well. Chris Jones, obviously a really good player, and again, just it's 0.25. He just needs the half. You can get the BS half sack that he might not even have a good play and still get credit for. So, and at plus odds too to take this at plus 120. Yeah, that's a bet that I will lean on. I think that's worth making. My next one is touchdown scored by a player who played for both the 49ers and the Chiefs at some point. I'm setting that at point 0.5 now. You know, these names here might be tough, but you have Blake Bell, you have Chris Conley, who's been a healthy scratch and might not even play, but we'll see. I'm going to count for the sake of this activity. We're counting Blaine Gabbert passing touchdown because that's such, an unlikely thing to happen, and it's already kind of unlikely to begin with. We're going to count that in there if Blaine Gabbert passes for a touchdown because it feels like in the spirit of the thing. Uh, Richie James, Jerick McKinnon, who might not play, we'll see, and then Mooney Ward, who could get a pick six in theory. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're taking the under because it's unlikely, but I'm going to take the over personally because I want to root for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under on that. It's Richie James. Like he's going to be their starting kick returner unless the Chiefs decide to actually activate Kadarius Toney, who hasn't
Mm,
played in a while. I don't think that's
yeah.
going to happen.
I mean,
So
he has played well in the Super Bowl.
yeah, but I don't ruin it. It's the offense got better as soon as him and Sky Moore stopped playing football.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see either of them. But I think Richie James probably has the best chance.
Mm.
Blake Bell, I I think if Blake Bell scores a touchdown in the Super Bowl, I don't think it's a good sign for the
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. You're
Uh,
next.
my next one is Marquez Valdez Scantling over 18 and a half receiving yards minus 125. He's done that in his last 2 games. And BLG, I've been is awful to MVS this season as anybody. I
Mm.
didn't like it when the Chiefs signed him last year, and I didn't like that they brought him back this season. And he had an awful regular season. Was one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL. But similar to last postseason, he has come up huge for the Chiefs in key moments in the playoffs. And last year, when they played the 49ers in the regular season, MVS had 3 catches for over
Mm.
100 receiving yards and found some success in openings down the field. And I think it's going to be a similar thing where he's probably not going to have more than 2 catches in this game, but he is their like lone reliable deep threat right now. If you want to call him reliable, Justin Watson's the only other guy they really try to use downfield. Like it's a lot of the stuff is intermediate to Kelsey, underneath to Rice, Pacheco, all that stuff. And they try to set up those shots downfield. So I feel like there's going to be at least 1 or 2 plays in this game where they look at MVS and try to get him deep down the field. So 18 and a half receiving yards, I feel like is very doable. So I think he's got a good chance to hit that.
I'm going to defer to your judgment in terms of, you have a better sense of this than I probably do. I haven't watched the Chiefs all the time, but, and maybe I'm, again, overreacting to a personal experience thing, but that drop, he had against the Eagles and just some of these I don't trust MVS is my problem, and I can't feel good if he doesn't get the over about betting on him. I'll be like, why did I do that? Why did I possibly put faith in him? And if I get it wrong and I doubt him and he proves me wrong, okay, good for him. I can live with that. So I am going to differ from you, and I'm just going to lean the over here, or sorry, the under here.
That's fine. I get it.
Points scored by not a touchdown, field goal, or extra point kick. So basically, like a 2-point conversion, or like a fair catch kick. So like some weird kind of NFL anomaly, or 2-point conversion, or a drop kick on an extra point that counts. So basically, like non-traditional points scored in the NFL. I have that set at 1.5. I should note, last year, Jalen Hurts did get a 2-point conversion to tie the game at 35-35 before the Chiefs ultimately took the lead. So, we've seen a 2-point conversion in the Super Bowl recently. 1.5, are you taking the over or under on that?
I'm going to go under.
Okay.
So, I mean, so that could include it's like 2-point conversions and
safety. Yeah, safety would be in there too, right?
I think a safety is probably more likely than a 2-point conversion, because that is especially for these coaches who aren't going to be super aggressive. And I feel like we can bank on that. Like, unless the circumstance calls for it, they're not just going to go for 2. Like they just don't do that.
Could be one of those deals though, where it's like a penalty, puts it at the one on the penalty after this, or in the play where puts the ball on the 1-yard line, they go for 2 from there. But yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if Andy still didn't do that. And I think it would take Mahomes being like, no, let's go for 2. What is going on?
Because, it's a yard. Come on.
Yeah. Because I mean, we've seen Mahomes do that kind of stuff, but sometimes Andy is really similar to Kyle Shanahan. It's got to be about the circumstance that they find themselves in. So I'll go under on that one. My next one's Isaiah Pacheco, under 2.5 receptions, plus 135. And this is a circumstance where I don't think Jerick McKinnon's going to go in this one. Andy was pretty honest about it. And Pacheco has been getting a lot more involved in the passing game. And they had success against the 49ers last year with the screen game. So you would think this is an easy bet. I just think 2.5, you're going to need him to get to 3 receptions is a lot for him, because he's had a couple of big games, as far as passing goes this season. But for the most part, they're not looking to dump it off to Pacheco, 5 times a game or something like that. And so I feel like 2.5 is just kind of high for me, especially against a 49ers team that's been pretty good against running backs catching passes out of the backfield and stuff like that. So I feel good about that one, but I acknowledge it could totally blow up in my face.
I really like him as a player. I mean, I don't know if that's controversial, but I just think he's underrated almost. I like the way he runs. It's just aesthetically very pleasing. I love a running back who only goes forward, isn't a guy who necessarily, maybe he doesn't always, break the longest runs, but he just he always falls forward. There's always positive yardage. He's keeping it, and he runs hard. I like Pacheco a lot. And I do think he'll be important as a runner, but yes, I am not counting on him so much as a pass catcher in this game. So I will also take the under on the 2.5. He probably hits 2. I bet you he hits 2 exactly. And then anyone taking the over is like, come on, another one. And it won't get there. My penultimate one, I believe here, yes, is players who score an octopus, which again happened last year because Jalen Hurts got in on the tush push for the touchdown that brought it to 34-35 or 33-35. And then he also ran it in the next play for the 2-point conversion try. So again, it has happened recently. It's not impossible. It is rare. I'm guessing you're taking the under based on you don't think there's going to be a 2-point conversion. I will also actually take the under on this.
Yeah. I love it when it happens, especially in fantasy football. But yeah, I just don't. I really don't think the Chiefs would go for a 2-point conversion, barring a situation to tie the game or something like that. My final one, and I felt like I reached kind of deep for this. It's Patrick Mahomes over 7.5 consecutive pass completions at plus 120.
Okay.
really, this just that's a lot. Obviously, you got to get 8 completions in a row for this to hit. But Mahomes
Mm.
has been such an efficient game manager and passer in the postseason. Like he just did this against the Ravens last week, where he just started that game and for the most part was just absolutely perfect the entire game, like just going nuts. And I feel like he's gonna continue that kind of play. Like I talked about it on Arrowhead Pride this week. Like I was doing way more mental gymnastics about the Chiefs matchup against the Ravens and that defense than I am about this matchup against the 49ers. Like I just, yes, they have some stars on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't feel like they have the personnel to totally shut down Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think it's a long shot that
Mm.
he could go on a streak in this game where he completes 8 passes in a row.
I man, my theory on picking this game is I'm gonna feel like such a jerk if I count on Patrick Mahomes to lose to Brock Purdy. Like, I'm gonna feel like such an idiot if I do that. So I have a tough time betting against him in any capacity, kind of. Now, it's not totally in his control, is the thing here. I think I'm going to take the under here in part because it's not just fun if I agree with you on everything, and also in part because the Chiefs pass catchers, I just said with MVS earlier, I just don't totally trust them. I think there could be, it's not even, it's again, it's not just up to Mahomes. There could be a really bad drop or two mixed in there. He's had to deal with drops all year. We've seen that. So it's tough because betting against Patrick Mahomes at some level, but I'm also, I think, leaning into issues that have been present for the Chiefs all year. So I would probably just stay away from this one. Really, it's not, I don't really feel confident in either side as much. I just avoid it altogether. But since we're making a pick here, I'm going to say that he actually goes under.
That's for sure the safer bet. Like this isn't an easy thing. This is just Mahomes did it last week, I think, against a better defense.
Mhm.
And so I'm just banking on him to continue to play at an absurd level. But those are our Super Bowl over-unders.
I have one
As
more. I have one
oh, okay.
more for
LG's got
you.
one more.
Sorry. That is which team's quarterback will take. It's not really a true over or under. It's just which team, but whatever. You get the point. Which team's quarterback will take the final snap of the game? Chiefs or the 49ers? There's a lot to think about here because it's like, are they taking a
Yeah.
knee? Are they trying to score still? What's the deal?
I think it's the Chiefs, and hopefully
Mm.
it's to run the clock out.
Is it Mahomes or do they put Blaine Gabbert onto the field to give him the
It's
little
gonna
bit of
be
a
Mahomes. They're
okay?
not putting Blake Gabbert up the field.
Okay. Well, sometimes I feel like they like to do that, because we got to get the backup into the game, give him
Yeah.
some recognition. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say, man. I'm gonna say I'll go opposite. I'll say the 49ers, but in a desperation situation. They're trying to score, but they do not, and the Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
I like that. So let's get to our Super Bowl predictions. And I've been talking about this game all week long. I'm ready to get there. And as I already mentioned, BLG, like I feel, I feel like I'm too confident in the Chiefs, but apparently outside of Kansas City, like that's not the vibe people have. Like there's still a lot of people that say, the Chiefs offense wasn't good this year. They only put up 17 points against the Baltimore Ravens, and Patrick Mahomes has been a game manager, and they turn the football over, and they've got all these drops, and it's like, yeah, but you just haven't been watching the way that they've played in the postseason, and this all started to shift in their Week 17 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was the first time all year. Don't get me wrong, BLG. Like I was not confident in this team prior to that game.
Yeah.
And that was the first time all season Harrison Butker kicked 6 field goals. It was the first time all season Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes committed to, we cannot turn the football over. If we don't turn the football over, we can beat anybody. And they committed to it, and they have sustained that throughout the entire postseason run. If they do not turn the football over, their defense is good enough to get them where they want to go. And I think at the end of the day, this Chiefs defense has still somehow failed to get the recognition that they deserve. They've been tremendous all season long, but everybody overlooks them because of Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor Swift and all of the other narratives. Like this Chiefs defense deserves to be in like an all-time discussion, and they're not getting that recognition at all. And I think that that's going to be on full display on Sunday in the Super Bowl. I just think that Steve Spagnuolo is going to have a lot of stuff that's going to give Brock Purdy some problems.
It's the 49ers are a weird team because they were obviously so dominant in the regular season and so good. They deserve that 1 seed without a question. And even in the playoffs, like when you look at what they've done this year, they beat every playoff team in not like obviously in the playoffs itself, but every team that was made the playoff picture at some point this season, they beat those. So they've beaten like, the best that's been on their schedule. Obviously, they lost to the Ravens, but for the most part, they've been really, really good in the regular season. And the playoffs, they have not been good. I would argue their playoff wins have been more about the other team losing than them like really going out and being the better team and winning that game and seizing it, as much as they've just been able to survive and advance. And man, Brock Purdy, as I've said in previous episodes, he's been begging to throw a pick, like in a crucial spot. He's just begging to do it. He's gotten so fortunate with some of these dropped interceptions, and it just feels like it has to happen at some point. And why not against the best defense in the NFL and the Chiefs defense? I feel like they're going to be able to take advantage of that. So again, I can't bet on Kyle Shanahan being conservative. I can't bet on Purdy beating Mahomes. I mean, it comes down to that at the end of the day. It's Mahomes. He's been inevitable. And it's kind of crazy just because, again, this Chiefs team for a lot of the year wasn't even considered to be that great, especially relative to other Chiefs teams. I wish the Eagles could have played this Chiefs team last year because I think they're a worse version of the team that won the Super Bowl last year. And yet here they are in a position where I still think that it just feels like I'm getting points. I'm getting points to take them. Like it's a no-brainer. If Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and they blow this game, I'm not going to feel dumb for believing in them. It'd be much more the other way around, that if I put faith in Brock Purdy and the 49ers to actually win this game. And to a larger point, again, this kind of is an Eagles take on things. Does karma exist? Does justice in the world exist if the 49ers win this game for how whiny and everything they've been? Like, we can't let that happen. We can't justify, we can't reward whining. We can't do that. We need, for the sake of humanity and all that is good, the Chiefs need to win the Super Bowl. So I am hoping they do. I am manifesting they do. Typically, as you probably know, Steven, I am a coward and I emotionally hedge bet things. And I was considering doing that. I was considering betting the 49ers money line because, hey, if they win, at least I get some money. I'm not doing that for this game. I think that hopefully, if anything, that should speak to the confidence that I have in my pick, that I think the Chiefs are actually going to win. I'm betting their money line. I think they're going to do it. And I hope they do.
Yeah, you talk about like it feels like the 49ers have gotten kind of lucky in their postseason wins. And I totally agree. Like, it's that the matchup against the Packers, like it took some lucky plays from Brock Purdy, who was terrible in that game. Apparently just cannot play in the rain because he could barely throw a football in that game. And the Packers just made mistakes. And then Jordan Love kind of fell apart at the end. Like it was just felt like it was too big of a stage for him at this point in his career, where the Packers really surpassed expectations, I think, this season. And then similar thing in the NFC Championship game, where it just felt like the stage got too big for the Lions and they just fell apart. And it's drop passes and lucky plays for San Francisco. And like when you look at the Chiefs' losses this year against good teams, like they lost to the Eagles, they lost to the Bills, they lost to the Lions in week 1. Like all of those games were lost because of mistakes, because of drop passes, because of pick sixes and fumbles that weren't Patrick Mahomes' fault, but like were on the pass catchers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the 49ers have been winning games. That's how the Chiefs were losing games early in the season. But they haven't been doing that in the postseason. And so they've been succeeding in winning football games. And I just feel like the Chiefs have played such mistake-free football here in the playoffs that they're not going to give the 49ers those kinds of breaks, because the 49ers, the way that they've been playing in the playoffs, they need those things because they are a team that is so supremely more talented than most other teams in the NFL. When you make the mistakes, that's how they come back and win. And I just don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to give them an opportunity to come back and win and make those kinds of mistakes in this game.
Who's your Super Bowl MVP? Is it Mahomes?
I think it has to be Mahomes, but if I had to bet on anybody other than him, I think I would bet on Chris Jones. It's, obviously it's tougher for defensive players to do it, but we've seen it happen in more recent memory. And like you have to have a monster game. And I just feel like I talked about already, like I think this is a legacy defining game for Chris Jones. He also hits that $1 million contract incentive. And like he played in week 18 when all the starters sat against the Chargers and Easton Stick and had the highest pressure rate of like any player in the NFL in the regular season in that game, because he was just trying to get to Easton Stick and get that $1 million. So I think he's going to be coming after Purdy. If I was going to bet on anybody other than Mahomes, I think it'd be Chris Jones.
I mean, obviously it's very incredibly likely to be either Mahomes or Purdy, but I'm going to say it's Kelsey, because if there's ever a time where like a skill player has an extra kind of narrative or built-in, case or whatever for the voters, I think it would be now in this moment. Now, it would take probably like maybe a 3 touchdown game for him kind of thing. Maybe it takes going back to one of the prompts earlier, a trick play. Maybe he throws a touchdown pass or something like that. But I think it could be, there is a scenario more than if here's how I'll phrase this. If Travis Kelce is ever going to win Super Bowl MVP, I think this is the moment it would happen. So I'm going to lean into that and say he gets it on a multi touchdown game.
It doesn't feel like he could get any more famous than he already is at this point. Like dating Taylor Swift, and he's a first ballot Hall of Fame player. He's a Super Bowl champion. But yeah, like if he wins Super Bowl MVP this season, like it's gonna go to a completely different level. I think, like especially just all he has to do is show up and have a monster game like he did in the AFC Championship game, and it's already going to be the only thing that anybody is talking about on Monday after the Super Bowl. Like he has this season like surpassed Patrick Mahomes' level of fame, which is absolutely absurd.
And this is also how you get him even more involved, I should say. I'm sure he'll be involved on the podium in any case, but even more involved, because they'll be spotlighting him even more. And if you're going into the conspiracy angle of it, that's how you get Taylor also more involved in that connection is, recognize him. So yeah, I'm leaning into that.
Yeah, I don't hate it. But hopefully some of these bets hit for you guys. Like BLG mentioned, he'll have an article up at sbnation.com, so you can try to tag along with some of the bets and see how we do, or tweet at us and yell at us if we're just absolutely god awful at everything. But we're all riding with the Chiefs, which also does not make me feel good about the Super Bowl, but I'm feeling pretty confident. So hopefully we get a good game on Sunday. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we were doing right here on the SB Nation NFL show. And remember to stick around after the break. Our friend Rob Stats-Guerrero sat down with Raiders defensive end Max Crosby and former Saints quarterback Drew Brees. That's coming up next.